All right, hello there. Today, our lesson in Cycle 4 here, this is our second lesson, which is all about applications. This lesson is about exponential applications. So, we have done some of these throughout the course. We did some financial applications on growth and decay. And we did some other applications as well when we were kind of creating the equations for given situations. So this will be similar to those, but sometimes can be an extension as well. So, so therefore our learning goal, which I forgot to put in here, our learning goal is to be able to use our knowledge about exponential functions to answer word problems, basically. Okay, so here's an application. You may have heard of gossip trees. So, a gossipy friend sends a secret to three friends in a text message. Each of these three recipients will then send it to three new friends. So we're going to continue this pattern in order to complete the first four rounds. And we're going to use what's called a tree diagram. And this is what the tree diagram starts like. So we have the original person is going to text three people. Let's go. And we're going to set up four rounds. So the first round, we're going to have now three people have that text message. So this is the original person. Now three people have that message. Now each of these people is going to send it to three more people. So we're going to just split them up. So now this person says sends the message to these three, this person sends it to these three, this person sends it to these three. So now in round two, we have a total of nine people additionally who know it. And now in round three, each of these people is going to tell it to three additional people. So each of these three, yes, tell three more people, and same here and here. So we have another huge group. And then the round four, sorry, each of these people are going to tell three additional people. So you can see it grows quite rapidly. And we want to make an equation of this to answer questions like what's going to happen when we get to round A, right? It could be round 20, it could be round 5. But the simplest, instead of having to do this diagram over and over again, we want to make an equation to model this situation so that we don't have to keep drawing dots all the time. Because you can see it can get quite cumbersome as you get through higher rounds. So what we're going to do first is set up a table. So in round one, number of texts sent was three. That original person sent three texts. And then in round two, the number of texts sent was, you can go back to the diagram and count, but it was nine. And in round three, there were 27 texts sent. And then finally in round four, if you count all those dots, there were 81 texts sent. And we did not get to round five in our diagram because you could see it would get a little annoying to have to draw all of those. So we're going to make an equation so we can calculate what happens in round five. So if you remember back to when we first started talking about exponential functions, if you take the first differences, so if you go 9 minus 3 is 6, 27 minus 9 is 18, 81 minus 27 is 54. So you can see the first differences are clearly not the same. So that means this is not a linear function. And if you take the second differences, so 18 minus 6, 15 minus 18, sorry, 54 minus 18, those would be the second differences. Those would also not be the same. So it's not quadratic. But to test if something is exponential, you take the ratio. You do the second number divided by the number above it. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 27 divided by 9 is 3, and 81 divided by 27 is also 3. And because this number, these ratio numbers are all the same, therefore this has to be an exponential function, and that can help us create the equation. So let's use our table to predict the number of texts sent in round 5. Well, if we go back to the table, notice how I have to multiply each number by 3 to get to the next number. So to get to the next number here, I'm going to multiply 81 by 3 to get how many texts in round 5. So that's 81 times 3. So in round 5, we would get 243 texts. But what if I wanted to know how many tests were sent in round 20 or round 200? You don't want to have to create a table of values to find those numbers. So what we're going to do next is to figure out an equation so we can find the number of texts sent out in any round. So if you remember, the general form of an exponential function is y equals a times b to the x. A is our starting point. So how many things did we start with? Or sometimes, remember when we did financial, what amount of money did we start with? Here we started with one person. So A is going to be 1. B is the multiplier. So what's the ratio, the common ratio in the table of values? Just to remember, if B is greater than 1, that gives you a growth. So if something is increasing, your multiplier has to be bigger than 1. If your function or situation is going down, your B has to be between 0 and 1. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind when you're making equations for these situations. In our case, our multiplier was 3. And then x, we're going to keep that here just to make our general equation. That's the number of times the multiplier is applied. So if I'm going to do 20 rounds, I would put 20 in for x and then throw that into my calculator. So the equation for this situation is y equals 3 to the x because a is 1. You don't need to put 1 here because 1 times anything is just that thing back. So we don't need to put the 1. So that's our equation for the situation, nice and simple. So what's the next question? So how many texts will be sent in the ninth round? So we're going to use our equation here. So y equals 3 to the x, and we're going to replace x equals 9 and then solve for y. So y equals 3 to the 9, and if you put that into your calculator, you should get 19,683. I strongly suggest that you try that out in your calculator just to make sure you're using the correct button to get to the correct answer. The button on my calculator, it's a y to an exponent x, but I think some of you have the little, it's like a triangle pointing upward. Um, like if you do shift 6 on your computer, you might see that symbol. So try that out and make sure you can get the right number. So therefore, 19,683 texts will be sent in the 9th round. That's crazy, right? So be careful with what you share with people on text or in social media. You never know how many people are going to say those things. Okay, number 5, which round will the number of texts exceed 200,000 for the first time? So we're going to do a guess and check here, okay? Because basically you want to figure out what is this exponent to make y equal to 200,000 or greater. So I'm just going to try different exponents. If you remember from the 9th round, it was 19,000, so that's not close to this. So I'm just going to test numbers. You can start wherever you would like. I just said, okay, I'm going to go up by ones and see what happens. So if I go 3 to the 10, so in the 10th row, I get to 59,000 texts. That's too low still, so let's go up to 11. 3 to the 11 is 177,000 and a bit. That's getting close, but it's just too low. So let's go to the next number. So the 12th round, I get to 531,000. Okay, so it's going to happen somewhere after the 11th round, which means it happens sometime in the 12th round that the number of texts will exceed 200,000. And that's basically it. I think that's the last part. Yeah, that's basically it for the example. It is similar to what we've been doing. I have created an exponential applications practice sheet. There's only 3 questions on it. One does involve creating a table of values and a graph and then getting an equation from that. But there are also questions that just involve creating the equation and then using the equation. But I've provided the answer for you on the applications practice page so that you can check what you're doing. Once you're feeling confident with that, you can go ahead and try the 4.2 quiz on Brightspace. That is it for today. If you have any questions, please contact me through the envelope icon in Brightspace. See you next time.